Welcome to Scary Stories, the channel that tells you scary stories.
Welcome to Scary Stories NYC. I'm your old pal Bigfoot. We had scheduled an all-new episode for this morning entitled Dogman Wrecked My Bigfoot Nest, but it seems YouTube has demonetized that one. I've appealed the decision of the bots and asked them for a manual review. I hope we can get that cleared up and maybe have that video online later today, or else tomorrow, or else this weekend. In the meantime, I've collected some of my favorite stories from some old deleted episodes, and I'd like to share them with you instead this morning. We've got 2 Dogman stories that took place in Massachusetts, featuring actual photos of Wolf Swamp there. We've also got a story read by Colleen Grate, who is the voice of Debbie American. You've seen her in those cartoons we've been showing with Bigfoot in the Bigfoot Nest each episode. She's the one who says words like redecorating. She's also the voice of Khalida Lycan, that dog lady at the end of each of our episodes. So she's going to be reading us a scary story later this episode too. But first, we've got this very strange Dogman story, which we like to call Dogman Gave Me a Headache, as told to and read by Peter Bernard. After my divorce, I had just enough money left to get this really nice small house I could reboot my life in. It was by my standards out in the country, but it was really not that far from a small town, and only around an hour out of New York City, depending on traffic. I mostly worked online, but sometimes I still had to travel into the city to meet clients, so I didn't want to move any farther out than that. I don't want to name the town for reasons that you'll understand soon, but we were essentially built right into the forest. It was a new development, but it was built to resemble the way people used to build a neighborhood 100 years ago. Each house was different, both in size and style, and none of them were very close to each other. It was a fairly rich neighborhood, but with very down-to-earth people living there. There was a lot of privacy, and privacy costs money. Me? I had spent every last penny to move there, and I was eating ramen noodles while I struggled to keep the electricity turned on. Sometimes I wondered if I would starve to death in this well-off neighborhood. It got a bit severe some nights, but almost as soon as I moved in, I had a bigger problem, as the headaches had begun. These were not migraines, but they were debilitating and distracting anyway. I work freelance and I need to be creative for clients nearly every day. The headaches made it hard to be creative any day. The first time someone paid me for something, I went straight to a local doctor that had been recommended to me. She told me right off from the description of the headaches that I had an allergy. This was news to me. I didn't remember ever having an allergy before. She asked me if I had any pets, and of course I didn't. My wife took them all. She asked me what pets I had when I lived with my wife, and I told her we had 3 cats and a tarantula. No dogs? She asked. No dogs, I answered. Why? Well, it just looks like a dog or cat allergy, that's all. I went back to see her when the results came, and she was still going on about me being allergic to dogs. I don't have a dog, I reminded her. She advised me to have my house professionally cleaned. Maybe the previous owner had dogs. That made sense to me, but I couldn't afford to hire anyone, so I just did a big spring cleaning on the place by myself. It took a whole day. I was dragging things out the front of the house and really scouring the place clean. I experienced no headaches the entire day while cleaning. I thought it was over. The next day was the first of a heat wave, so I closed up the place and turned on the air conditioner. That was one thing I found a bit disappointing about the house. Why no central heat and air conditioning? Instead, there were old-school air conditioners in the windows. For the price I paid, well, let me not get sidetracked. So I turned on the air conditioner in the living room and brought my laptop in to work on the coffee table. After only a few minutes, the headaches began. They got progressively worse until I turned off the AC and went upstairs to bed, just giving up on the work I had to do. I started to feel better upstairs, and I went back down to get my laptop so I could get back to work up in my bedroom. Just walking into the living room itself gave me a headache. I grabbed my laptop and went back upstairs to have another brief nap. It soon dawned on me that something in the living room was what was giving me the headaches. I spent a lot of time there both day and night normally. I would need to avoid it for now until I could isolate the cause of the problem. It must be something other than a dog since I don't have one, and there was no way a dog could get into the living room without me knowing about it. So with this little workaround working upstairs, I found my headaches greatly reduced. I wondered if they might be psychosomatic somehow because it didn't make sense why and how they were happening. A while later, I was talking on the phone with an old friend and absent-mindedly plopped down on the couch in the living room, having forgotten about my headaches. It was a cool night and I had the windows open but with the screens and shades down. While talking to my friend, I heard a scratching sound and I began to feel one of my headaches coming on. Realizing I had been in the headache room, I stood to walk upstairs and continue the conversation up there. But before I could leave the room, I saw a silhouette of a tall figure on the curtains over the air conditioner, and I nearly had a heart attack. It seemed to be gyrating or something. It looked like a genie or giant was dancing outside the window. It was the weirdest and most evil-looking thing I had ever seen. What was I looking at? I gasped and stifled a scream, not wanting to attract the attention of whatever was casting that immense shadow on my curtains. I ran upstairs and slowly, painfully slowly, tried to silently open the window upstairs above the air conditioner. Headache throbbing, pounding out a bead on the sides of my forehead. Sweating and shaking, I peered out the window and looked down. It looked like a bear was scratching its back on my air conditioner. I must be allergic to bears. It scratched its back on the air conditioner. Its hair or germs or whatever must have gotten sucked into my house every time I put the AC on in that room, and so therefore this was why I was getting the headaches. It would also explain why this had never happened to me before, since I had always lived in New York City. I would never have come close enough to a bear to know I was allergic to it. All neat and nicely solved. Even though my head still felt awful, there was a big sense of relief in knowing that I at least would have something definite to tell the doctor. Maybe something could actually be done. I figured at the very least there must be something I could use as a bear repellent, so I knew the headaches would be ending soon. And then, the bear walked away from the window toward the woods, and I could see that it was not a bear. I couldn't understand what it was, but I knew what it wasn't, and it wasn't a bear. It was a lot like a bear, but the ears were too long, and the snout was too long too. The body was too thin. I remember thinking maybe it was a deformed bear at first, and then it just kept walking toward the forest, and I could see it had a tail. Do bears walk for that long, I wondered? And what kind of bear has a tail? It didn't have bear legs either, it had dog legs. It was some kind of mutant dog. That's what the doctor had predicted too, that I was allergic to a dog. All of this time I was sort of looking at the situation in an analytical way. There is a creature. What is the creature? Creature makes me have headaches. But maybe because of the pain I was in, never did I feel the thing most people would feel if a bear or a bear-sized dog were coming around habituating themselves on your property. Never once had I realized I probably should be experiencing a bit of healthy fear. As the creature got closer to the forest, I leaned further and further out the window to see it better. I shouldn't have done that. The thing turned around. It saw me looking at it. We stared at each other right in the eye for a few seconds, but it felt like much longer. If I didn't feel fear before, I felt it now. This thing was intelligent. It was as big as a bear, and it was intelligent. And then I noticed it was also angry. It bellowed so hard the glass in the window vibrated around me. It started walking back toward my house, and I slammed the window shut and locked it. Were all the windows and doors locked downstairs? I couldn't remember, and I wasn't brave enough to go back down there and check. I ran into a closet and hid in the dark listening. I had no idea what happened after that, as the sound in the closet was pretty muffled. I do know that the headache continued for at least an hour, so I don't think the thing went away, and I was afraid it might be in the house. Somehow I fell asleep and I woke up with no headache. I left the closet and saw that it was morning. I needed to get out of there before the thing came back. I had no place to go, so I got on the phone and started basically asking everyone I knew if I could couch surf for a while, and that I was selling the house I just moved into. When they asked me why I needed to move so suddenly, I told them I had a mold allergy and that there was mold in the house and it was making me have fierce headaches. People actually sympathized with that story, and the other benefit of it was that it didn't make them think I was crazy and seeing dogs that walked on their hind legs and yelled at me. Life is a bit tough at the moment thanks to Dogman, but I will sell that place, and when I do, I will be back in the money and free of these headaches forever. I have never gone back to the place since, and I have no plans of going back until I officially move out. I have to keep faith that someone will buy this house so that I can end this chapter of my life with Dogman.
Hey, Biggity Foot. What are you doing for July 4th, yo?
I don't know, Debbie, but I do know what I'm doing the weekend after.
OMG! What's that, yo?
I'm gonna go to the Collectibles Extravaganza up in Boxborough, Massachusetts, right next to Wolf Swamp, where Henry Lee Dogman lives.
Badass, yo!
I know, right?
Are you gonna, sell your stuff?
I'm gonna buy other people's old stuff and turn it into my new stuff.
Good, cause your nest could sure use some, redecorating, yo.
Come to the Collectibles Extravaganza, hosted by the king of pop culture himself, TV's famous Gary Summers, who appeared as an expert on pop culture on the PBS Antiques Roadshow. It's the weekend of July 6th and 7th, 2019, at the air-conditioned Regency Hotel, where Route 111 meets Route 495 in Boxborough, Massachusetts, home of the Wolf People. See you there. The Dogman of Dogtown, as told to and read by Peter Bernard. Dogtown, Massachusetts, located in the middle of the woods, has a history of strangeness that led up to its becoming a ghost town, and possibly an even weirder history since then. It was first settled in 1693 because it was hidden away in the forest and inland, where pirates never noticed it. In the late 1700s, at its peak, around 100 families hid out in Dogtown. There are several stories about how it got its name. One is that there were lots of stray dogs in the area roaming free. Another story has it that it was named after the wolves who lived in that forest. A different story was that after everybody else had left the town, the few witches who remained there hired dogs to guard them. In some versions of that story, the dogs that the witches employed were werewolves. According to a late folklorist named Roger Cahill, the Agawam Indians claimed that their ancestors, who came from the Dogtown area, were canine-headed humans. He also claimed that a local form of the wolfbane plant which grows in the area would change any person's head into that of a dog. The town was abandoned before the 20th century when Roger Babson, the founder of Babson College, decided to employ local out-of-work stonecutters to carve weird messages like "Be clean," "Keep out of debt," and "Help Mother" on large boulders all over the site, making a visit to the location even more surreal. I've read a quote from Babson online saying that doing the work brought him great pleasure, but that his own family felt he was defacing the stones and embarrassing all of them. I have to admit the Babson Boulders, as they are now called, were the main reason I wanted to visit the area and why I decided to camp out in Dogtown, which is now a park. There are stories of large dogs and supposed werewolves in the area, and I did know that before my trip. For instance, on March 17, 1984, someone reported seeing a huge wolf in the area. That same night, other people reported seeing a monstrously large gray animal run into the woods. Rumors swirled that Dogtown had its own immense werewolf. I could see no stories online of any werewolf activity in the area since then, so I figured that was all hogwash. My trip happened in 2008, long after the sightings of the large gray predator. I just wanted to see the remains of the cellars of the old Dogtown buildings, read as many of the Babson boulders as I could with my own eyes, and generally enjoy the place as much as I could for one day and one night, then boogie on out of there. I figured it would be like any of the dozens of other times I had gone camping. I was very wrong about that. First of all, the place is disorienting. I remember finding a boulder that read, "If work stops, values decay," and scratching my head contemplating that one for a while. Then I wandered in what I thought was a straight line for about 10 or 15 minutes, and somehow found myself right back at that work stop boulder. What? How had that happened? Since then, I read David Paulides' books, and he mentions boulder fields as being a common place for his mysterious disappearances to happen. I think if I had known that at the time, I might not have chosen to camp so close to those giant, weird things. I might have been going a little bonkers from the high strangeness vibe that the area emits, but I felt like the Babson boulders each exuded their own personality. Some of them indeed seemed to feel as though they had been defaced. Others felt the mottos mirrored their own sentiments and bore them proudly. I guess this was all caused by my imagination, the heat, and the surreal location. 2 more times that day I got lost and walked in circles while thinking I was going straight. I found that I needed to concentrate far more than usual just to travel from one location to the other. The entire day felt different. It might be the Oz effect that some researchers into the paranormal and UFOs talk about. The feeling like somehow you're not in Kansas anymore. Or Massachusetts in my case. I set up camp and got ready to settle in for the night, not really satisfied with my trip and still unnerved by how many times I'd gotten turned around in that one day. I was trying to remember the last time something like that happened to me, and to be honest, it had never happened that bad. I wondered if I were okay. Was I dehydrated? Was my mind all right? My original plan had been to travel to a different location to camp the next night, but now my plan was to head home first thing in the morning and spend the day resting. If I didn't feel normal by Monday, I was already wondering what kind of doctor I should be going to see. So I was a bit stressed out as I fell asleep in my tent that night. I woke up to the sound of something sort of growling or snarling outside my tent. It sounded like a dog, but an agitated one. Then I heard it howl, and I could tell it was a large one as well. And it was right outside my tent. In those days, I never used to bring any kind of defense with me when I went camping. This night is the reason I now do. I was never so frightened in my life. I tried to be as still as I could because now I could hear the huge dog sniffing my tent. I never sweated so much in my life before or since. I was convinced I was going to get ripped up by that thing. I was shaking all over and completely on edge. Big dog barked. I screamed. He scared me so much. I couldn't deal anymore. He kept barking and I kept screaming, and then the thing tore my entire tent apart in a savage flurry of claws and teeth. He just ripped the top away, and he was looking at me, and I could get a clear look at him from his knees to his head, because this was not a dog. It was a hairy man with the head of a dog. A wolf-like dog. Its arms were sort of halfway between wolf arms and human arms. Its legs appeared to be sort of the same, but it was a bipedal creature like a human, even though it looked more like a wolf, if that makes any sense at all. If it had the head of a dog, I got inspired with the idea that it might have the brain of a dog as well. I grabbed my water bottle and wham, smacked the huge upright dog on the nose hard with it. He yelped and took a few steps back, whimpering. I stood up quickly. "Bad dog," I shouted, making myself as big as I could and sounding as deep as I could make my voice sound. "Bad dog." Still, as big as I tried to be, I had to tilt my neck back to look up at this monster. I took a quick step forward while making some kind of angry caveman sound. The Dogman retreated to the wood line, then turned around and watched me intently. He still hadn't made up his mind about me, apparently. I got my stuff packed in record time while trying to look casual about the whole thing, and I beat it back to my car. The thing watched me pack and leave, but did not follow me. Since then, I've researched all I could about that place, and although the giant wolves are a common thing for people to see over there, I think I might possibly be the first to ever report an upright walking canid in Dogtown. So, if you're visiting Dogtown Common, don't just watch your step around the ancient basement dugouts from the old colonial houses. Also, watch your step at night around the Dogman. We'll be back with another scary Massachusetts Dogman story right after this.
I'd like to take a moment to say that if you have a scary story you'd like to tell us here, you can write Peter at peterbernard.com, or you can call our new Scary Stories hotline number and leave it to us in the form of a voicemail message. It's easy to remember. 804-LESCARY. That's 804-LESCARY, or 804-537-2279.
Here's a scary story submitted by a listener, but it's about a place I visited myself and took some pictures of. So you're going to be seeing pictures I took of the actual Wolf Swamp while I read this story called The Dogman of Wolf Swamp. Dear Scary Stories, I was very amused by your recent video when you said you were going to look for Dogman in Wolf Swamp in Boxborough. I'm not going to tell you who I am or why I was there at Wolf Swamp, but I want to insist to you that the Dogman is quite real. The swamp is in fact named after him, and that you'd better confine your investigation of the place to the daytime. This all happened at Beaver Brook in the swamp. Basically, the swamp is mainly a forest, but it's a wetland as well. I was at Beaver Brook for reasons that I cannot get into, and I saw something in the trees. I quietly and slowly angled myself to get into a better position and angle to view whatever it was, so that I could see if I was in danger. When I finally could make it out, I was relieved to discover that it was a deer, an adult buck, and a large one. I almost laughed, but I didn't want to spook the animal, so I turned around and started going back to my former spot when, bam, the deer was jumped by 1, 2, 3 large black wolf-like creatures. I don't think wolves come in black, but these were pitch black animals. They looked like wolves. They had wolf snouts, noses, eyes, and ears, but they were very dark, and the large deer barely escaped the 3 of them. I was kind of in shock, but I knew I had to get out of there. I turned around, but I didn't like what I saw. There were more of those huge black dogs. And since the deer had left, now they all had me in their sights. I watched as the dogs lowered their heads almost to the ground, glaring up at me and snarling. I saw 4 of them, but got the impression there were more. I stood my ground. If I backed up, I'd be backing into the wolves that missed the deer, so I was surrounded and I knew I had better just hold still. As terrifying as this situation was, it was about to get exponentially more troubling. The main dog, front and center of me, stood up. He just went from all 4s to his hind legs, and he held his terrifying claws in front of him as large as a man's hands, and he made this kind of barking scream. I realized he was taller than me. On his hind legs, he seemed to be 9 feet taller. How could something so large not only exist undetected in the United States of America, but also run in packs? My mind was spinning, and I started to feel really nauseous and dizzy. I felt like I was going to be sick or faint or both. The main dogman walked up to me, and I was shaking all over, sweating. He looked pretty calm and angry. His breath smelled like dead things. He came very close to me, and he smelled my backside. I didn't move. He came around to the front and smelled that. Tears began rolling down my cheeks. Please don't bite me, Mr. Giant Two-Legged Dog, is what I was thinking. Please don't bite me, especially not there. I saw my mother in my mind, and I wished I could be with her one more time. I saw my childhood. I saw every time I was mean to somebody, and I wished I could go back and do the right thing in each case. I saw that I had not really been the good person I always liked to think I had been, and I really wished that this dog wouldn't eat me, so that maybe I could make amends to some extent. Another dog came over on all 4s and smelled me around my feet. Soon there were at least 5 dogs smelling me from all angles. Some sniffed while on all 4s, some while standing. It seemed to be a status thing. Only the alphas were standing at their full height. The underlings all crouched or stayed down on the ground. I was fascinated watching their interactions and realized they had an elaborate social system and pecking order. My brain asked me what good it was to be fascinated by information if the information wasn't going to save our lives. Why continue to make note of interesting facts when we will be dead in less than 5 minutes? Then, the initial one that had first smelled me shoved me. He pushed me hard, and the other dogs moved away, watching to see what would happen next. I started to plead with the huge dog, and he pushed me hard on both shoulders back into a tree. I hit the back of my head on the tree, and now everything was getting hazy. I started to black out as I saw the dogs surrounding me, closing in on me. I didn't expect to wake up, but I did, and the dogs were all gone. My head hurt for a few weeks after that, but no lasting damage. My cousin told me that the very next week, he saw the mother of all SWAT teams descend on the swamp, and they wouldn't even let him stay anywhere near the area until they were gone. They never did say why they were there or what the nature of their operation was, but there have been no more new reports of upright walking canids in the area of Wolf Swamp since then. Doesn't mean I think the place is safe. Dogman is a supernatural creature, and no matter where the government might have taken that tribe of them away to, they can always return at will to their native hunting ground. I know this to be a fact, although I can't explain why. Thanks for your channel. I figured you would want to know the truth about Dogman. I just want to make note that I have no idea if there's any truth to that story at all. The person sending it in assured me it was true, but that's not me saying this is the truth about Dogman. That's just what one listener has sent in. And now, this. Okay, if you're still watching, we've got an extra special treat for you. One of my favorite actresses and singers in the world. She plays Debbie American in Those American Girls. She plays Kalita Lycan, the dog lady at the end of our episodes. Colleen Grate. And she's got a very strange story to tell you, which we call
The Ghost of Bigfoot.
Read by Colleen Grate.
When I was a little 12-year-old brat, about 6 years ago, I seen a Bigfoot walking past our camping site. I had it in the light of my flashlight, so my older sister and her friend seen it also. It looked like it was gliding, left to right, with some bushes blocking off its bottom half from view. I explained to the two of them that Sasquatch doesn't rise and fall when he walks the way humans do. His head stays at a constant level, and this is why he seems to glide along. Then the Squatch emerged from the bushes, and I swear to you, it had no bottom half. It actually was gliding, like a ghost. In the darkness, I could see from the tip of its head down to its belly. Then it just sort of melted away underneath. No legs. My sister and her friend saw the same thing as I did, and it spooked us to the point where we got immediately out of there and went home. Once we felt safe, they made fun of the lecture I gave about the walking habits of Bigfoot and photoshopped me a fake degree declaring me not a cryptozoologist. Even though we all got LOLs about it after it was over, seeing that ghostly Sasquatch was the most terrifying moment in my entire life. If that thing had turned and looked at me, I swear I would have died.
And now, get ready for an all-new, completely uncensored, slightly bloody, and absolutely terrifying new Dogman story. Oh, wait. YouTube won't allow me to tell you stories like that on this channel. If you want to hear that, you're going to have to go to peterbernard.com and sign up for our paid subscribers club. You can choose any price you can afford for a 1-month subscription, and then every weekend, we tell you a story YouTube would never allow us to tell you on this channel. See you this Sunday for an all-new, very scary, completely uncensored Dogman story.
If you enjoyed this, please click like or consider subscribing. Remember to click the bell icon or you won't get notifications. If you want to listen to Bigfoot's secret uncensored story each Sunday, just go to peterbernard.com and become a paid subscriber. See you tomorrow. Same dog time, same dog channel.
Come back for more scary stories.